It's always a matter of setting this stuff up. And I'm hoping that this is going live. Oh, it's connecting to go live. And then it's going live. So that's all good. And here we are. I'm askew. There. Welcome to Conscious Mind Tripping with me, Audrey Newmont. One day I'm going to have a professional situation going here, but until then, you get me and how I work all this stuff out. And I'm going to go here, make sure that everything's all good in here, and it looks like I am. It's always an awkward start, right? Okay. Hi. Welcome. It's Wednesday night, and I have a conversation for you. And just to be clear, it might be a little challenging at times, just saying. And it's all good because sometimes we need to challenge ourselves, right? So let me start by saying, I don't even know what happened last week with Alexandra and all of that. I'm praying that tonight is very good with our podcast, and I believe my sound is good. Yep, it is good because I can check it right here. So thank you to Alexandra. I redid it and I put it on YouTube and then I reposted it. And if you haven't watched that, highly recommend it. I mean, Alexandra channels Golden Arrow, and over my many years of knowing them, it has just been one of those things for me that has been a powerful, powerful message that really, really has helped me in times of great struggle. So highly recommend going back and looking at that because she's talking about what's going on right now. So with that being said, thank you again, Alexandra. I love you very much. And oh my gosh, you know what's going to happen? That cat that's outside of here is going to squeak until he gets in. Or maybe not. Maybe I can talk low enough and he won't notice I'm in here. That's my cat, Jasper. He is a very big, fat, red cat, and he is a character. Yep, you can hear him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go let him in. Just bear with me. But you can't come on my lap. That's just not going to happen. Because there's just, not enough room for everybody. Okay, so things are adjusted with the cat. I've got all my stuff together here. And we're all ready to go. So Nick and I started our new Healthy Mind, Healthy Body course this past Monday night. And I can't even tell you enough. It was a lot of fun. And I think the information that we share is just fabulous. And I'm saying that because it's not all my information. I have studied a lot of people over all these years, and these people have given me the tools where I then take them and put them in my own format, hence the Mind Trip book, and all the tools are in there. So if you haven't picked one up yet, it's a whopping 98 pages with pictures and whatnot, and I put it into a game format so that it makes it easy for everyone to understand how our body works, how our mind works, how our hearts work. And it's important to know that right now because there's a lot going on. And if you're living in a lot of anxiety, stress, worry, all that kind of stuff, you're literally creating in your body. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. I have somebody that I just recently met, and here's where it could get controversial. This guy, Dr. Brian Artis, I went to his event at my friends Katie and Tony's, and I'm telling you, I'm going to be sharing some of that in this podcast, and it is, I think, very important information. So stick around, and Kimberly Ashburn is in the house. I always love it when we're talking. So thank you for joining me. So that course is starting, and I just posted, or I'm posting today. I took it and I put it into a YouTube video. So you can watch that first class for free. And even that, there's a lot of information in there that is life transforming. So I always say information equals power, and information about yourself is empowerment. So when you're learning how to be more conscious in your body, how to use your feelings to guide you, how to use your mind to keep you on track. All right, so he is coming onto my lap because he is just like a needy little boy, but he keeps me company. Come on. So you can watch it. I'll be posting it probably after I do this podcast. And so the next night will be on next Monday. And I think I'm going to talk to Nick and see if we can make it a little earlier for some of those of you who are in another time zone. Make it maybe a little easier for everybody. But Nick and I really enjoyed teaching together and doing that class together. We have a lot of fun, and we're going to be bringing in some speakers that are just phenomenal. This next week will be Justin Formanek, and then we're going to be having Eloise Buckner, Dr. Nancy Sachs. I know I say doctor. She is my doctor, and she is just wonderful. And Craig Shoemaker will be joining us, and so will Dr. Stephen Palmer, who is our in-house resident doctor of psychology, and he's also a spiritual practitioner like me. So I enjoy him a lot. He's one of my buddies, and he is phenomenal as well. He's actually done quite a few things that we'll get into teaching wise, and he's an interesting person. So with that being said, I want to say for those of you that celebrate Chinese New Year, it is the year of the snake. And I think it's going to be a big deal year for all of us. So, how do you use that information? How do you use the year of the snake? And it'd be fun. Look up your Chinese astrology at some point. Look and see. I think I'm a tiger, and the snake, and being this year of the snake, a lot of it is about shedding and letting go of those things that no longer serve you, and letting go of the past. It's very interesting. When I'm working with my clients, there is this tendency for a lot of people to hold on to the past, like that was such a good time, and they're reminiscing and they're lamenting it. Maybe they're in grief because they don't have whatever had happened in the past anymore. And unfortunately, when you keep holding on and you're not letting it go, that doesn't allow you to be here and enjoying what life has to offer in the moment. It's like you've got the car way back here, and there's not that ability to drive in the present. So when you're looking at the past, there is that part of it where we learn from it and we gain that wisdom. And that's another thing about the year of the snake. It's about being wise and owning that wisdom. So when there is something from the past that was great, that's that part where like, oh, I want to be in that again, and I don't have it anymore for whatever reason. There's a lot of us that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and we're like, oh, that was so much fun. You can talk to a lot of us that are of a certain age, and we'll be like, yeah, the 80s, the 90s, we had a very good time. And there's that part of it where we could be like, oh, you know what? We don't have that anymore. Like, I don't go out to the clubs anymore. I don't have that kind of, uh, those kind of festive things that I used to do where we go out dancing all night, and we'd go on trips, all of our friends together, and we would do all kinds of like fun and interesting things. And so it was a really good time. It was very festive and we enjoyed it. But there's a part of it where I'm here now, And I appreciate that fun time. I look back at my pictures and it's like, I tell funny stories. I have stories out the yin yang. But there's that part of it where I enjoy those memories and I be here and creating more enjoyable memories. The challenges are when we get stuck in the past and we're not doing what we can in the moment to make life worthy, valuable. So there's that letting go of holding on to the past. And then there's a part of it where letting go of anger. That's a very, very big one. I have clients that are holding on to anger over and over and over again. And that's one of those things that does nothing to serve you. When you have that anger and it's a victim anger in the past, you're rolling in it. There you are. And again, it doesn't give you the opportunity to be here now and creating from that vantage point. So when you're looking at past anger, that's almost always you're in that victim mode. So if you're in the anger of the past, there's a part of it where you want to be present and move it over into a righteous anger. And what are you going to do about it? There's all these possibilities, all these things that we can do with anger. It can be that thing that propels us. I know I've talked about this before, but I'm telling you, there is a lot of anger going on. And if you're living from the anger that is the victim, there's not much you're going to do about it. And it's creative. And when I say creative, your heart, putting out that electromagnetic energy with your mind, that thought behind it. So you're not creating from a vantage point of being in your power. So when you're moving it over to righteous anger, then you're being creative. In that kind of anger, what can I do? So when you're in this year of the snake, literally take a minute and write down, what am I still angry about? Could be anything. You know, Nick and I were talking about it, and you'll see it when you watch that the YouTube of the Healthy Mind, Healthy Body that first night. We have people, he was talking about a client, a mutual client that we work with. And again, this is a very common thing. He was angry about something, and I asked him about it, and he goes, "What are you talking about? I'm not angry." And it's like, well, this is going on. And it took a little while for him to really get, oh, you know what? That's right. We have a tendency sometimes with anger, it's just where we're at, it's just what we do. And we take on a belief sometimes that anger is powerful. And it is, but not from the victim space. It's powerful from the righteous place. So take some time and look at and start with, where do I feel anger in my body? Another thing that people do with anger is they'll suppress it and call it anxiety. So when you are in this year of shedding and you want to let go of the anger, first start noticing, where do you hold it in your body? A lot of times people get like where they tense up and they'll feel it in their shoulders. They'll feel it. A lot of people feel it in their stomach. We're going to talk about the stomach in a little bit here because I have something I wanted to share with you all. And so when you're looking at anger, take the time now. You can even pause this if you're watching it afterwards. Pull out pen and paper, and it's like, where am I still angry? And how does it serve me? And many of you will say, well, it doesn't serve me, because I hear that all the time. What are you talking about? It doesn't serve me. Well, it does. We do things because it serves us consciously or unconsciously. So when you pull out the pen and paper, what am I still angry about? Who is it? What is it? What's the scenario? And then when you're looking at it, and hi, Miss Kimberly, possible, Kim Possible. See you in the house. So when you're looking at that anger, there's this exercise that you can do with yourself. Whatever happened, how do I move it into a righteous anger? So you're asking yourself that question. You're getting into the critical thinking. And then you're looking at, is this something that I need to just talk through with maybe somebody or myself? Do I need to take some action? What can I do to literally shed this anger off? I don't want to hold on to it anymore. And so when you're doing that on the one side of the page, here's what the anger is. Maybe it's associated with something that happened as a kid, and you can see this pattern of holding on to anger. And maybe even being a kid, you were in the back seat of your parents' car and you watched them be angry and what they did with anger. So look at that. Is that what I do? And it's just a process. It's not to judge it, it's not to relive it, it's to look at it with understanding and getting that clarity so that you can let it go, so you can gain that wisdom. Because it's all about being in the moment and using that information for wisdom. Wisdom means I see it, I understand it, I'm letting it go, and I'm moving forward with a new habit, a new intention, a new way to be. And then the other one that people have a tendency to hold on to, lost love. I just worked with somebody today, and I know they don't mind me talking about this. This person knows this thing is over. He knows it's not right. He knows that there is a whole nother possibility, but there's that part of it where it's like looking back, it's like, but that was what it's still supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to end. This is supposed to be in my life. And there's a part of it where consciously, there's that 5-10% where he knows this isn't going to happen. But the kid in the back seat, that's the one that's saying, but this was supposed to be a forever thing. We were supposed to do this. We were supposed to do that. And I don't want to let it go. And what we do is we look at all the reasons why you wouldn't want to let it go. And some of it, again, goes back to our childhood programs, those 0 to 8 things. It also goes to the experiences that happened. Like for this person, there was a certain amount of abandonment in his life and a certain amount of massive grief and unprocessed grief and certain things that happened in the life. So when you have this thing and it's like, wow, this is wonderful. I really love it because the experiences before had been so challenging. There's a part of it, it's like, that was a bright spot in my life. I want to continue with that bright spot. But when you're wanting to hold on to something that was a bright spot, not getting, you get another bright spot. You get a new experience that you can have. And because of everything you've learned, it can be way better than the lost love. So it's super important to look at all of these things from a new vantage point, from a new perspective. That's that third button on your controller. So when you are looking at it and you're gaining perspective and you're able to process through it, there's a part of it for this person who is like very many of us. There is an element where it's like, you're here now. So what can you do now that changes that dynamic? So as you're shedding this, as you're letting it go, there's that part of it. Think about the snake that sheds its skin. It's like, that's done. And I'm fresh and I'm new and I've got this new energy. What am I going to do with that energy to make my life better? And we all have the ability to do this, but it's a process and you have to be in the process with it. And you have to look at these things that sometimes people don't want to look at. It's okay. But when you do look at it, and you look at it with compassion rather than judgment, you look at it with having that clarity, then it changes everything and you get a new lease on life. I have a friend of mine, I tell this story because it's just such a good story. This person could have held on to the first love of her life. And she had this amazing love of her life, but it didn't work out because this guy had issues that were not able to be lived with. So she moved on, she shed it, and she found the love of her life. And she had this amazing experience. This is somebody that's very near and dear to me. And so she had the love of her life. And unfortunately, he passed away. And it was like, what are you going to do with that? She shed it. She let it go. And she found another person who was not quite the love of her life, but he was a lot of fun and he was interesting and he was a whole experience until he wasn't. And then she let him go. And then at 62 years old, she goes and she does this back, it was 25 years ago now. She goes and has lunch with different people. It was back when, you would do lunches. And I laughingly say she found the baker, the banker, and the one. I keep all these things anonymous. And that one at 62 has been the love of her life. So when you're looking at lost love, there is an example. Love, let it go. Love again, big love, let it go. Love again. It's a fun experience. And then another big love. I know many people that don't have one love in their lifetime, much less four. So it's important when you're in the moment. Are you still holding on to something that's done? When you can learn from that, and here's a thing to do. What did I love about that person? How did that relationship work for me? What are the qualities that I am choosing in the next love of my life? And as you're doing that, you start with you. You're the love of your life. And when you're being the love of your life, then you can attract that thing that is that love of your life. I think we take on a belief sometimes that there is only one soulmate. No, there's a lot of them. And it's a matter of, am I open to receive? Am I open to give? Your heart has to be open for both. It's reciprocity. So as you're going into this year of the snake, is there something that you want to shed with that? Doesn't mean that you're letting them go forever. My friend did not let go of that, especially that second relationship. She treasured him for her whole life. She still treasured him, and her love of her life now appreciates that. So when you're looking at all of this, there's a part of it, hello, there's a part of it where you really want to be clear. What am I choosing here? Am I choosing to live in the past and hold on? It's like, if you think about it, that snake, if they don't shed that skin, I mean, it gets kind of tattered, I'm sure, and it gets kind of uncomfortable. It's a little tight, right? And that snake is probably like, oh, if it's not letting go of the skin, it's like it's hard to move forward. And it's like your skin gets a little dingy. If you ever look at a snake when they're about to shed, it's not so glorious at all. It's it's very dusty looking and dingy and not not like when it sheds, you see that new snake come out and they're all shiny and bright and ready to go. So in this year of the snake, make it where you're coming out and really facing the world with a whole new light, a whole new inner being. Do the work to open your heart, and that will talk to the 50 trillion cells. It'll ignite with the thinking, and you will be the effing sun, and you'll attract from that vantage point. Okay? So, on to the controversial things of the evening. Let me see, make sure I've finished with all of this. Mm-hmm. Um, Sometimes I take notes because I'm that kind of girl. So I went to that event at Katie and Tony's house, and I had already known about this guy. His name is Dr. Brian Ardis, and it's this book, Moving Beyond the COVID-19 Lies, Restoring Health and Hope for Humanity. So before I even get started with it, I'm going to say some of this might sound a little much, but one of the things, and I'm telling you from this book, I'm telling you from his information, and I'm telling you because I'm experiencing something from what he's having us do. So a while ago, it must have been like, I don't know, probably 2 years at this point, I watched his video. So Dr. Brian Artis, and he was talking about, are you ready for this? Speaking of today's the first day, the first day of the snake year, he's talking about snake venom and what snake venom does in our body and how we could get snake venom in our body. And it is fascinating. So he's talking on this night. He talked for like an hour and a half. And to be clear, he was fascinating and he's very amusing. And I'm actually going to be talking with his people to see about getting him on this podcast because I was wildly impressed. So, first, he starts talking about that thing that everybody took. And he's talking about, like he writes in here, the COVID lies. So, when that all came about and everybody was quite literally out of their minds, there were all these things that were told to us. So, he starts the night by saying, these are all the things that they said, and many of them, all of them. He had us actually, as the audience, start shouting out all these different things that we were told that were lies. And one of the things I shouted out was, they said, oh, you get this thing and you will stop the spread. You won't get it again. I remember that clearly. But in reality, many people who took that got it, didn't they? Over and over again, actually. So that was a lie. There was no science behind wearing a mask. That was a lie. There was the lie about hydroxychloroquine. I literally had somebody get very angry with me because I brought it up. And they said, no, that's a conspiracy theory and you're out of your mind. And it's like, okay, but, there's a lot of evidence backing it. It is a Nobel prize winning drug that has been used for a long time and maybe it does something. So we were lied to about that. We were lied to about that it mutates stronger. That was a lie. There were all these things that they said, and many of them were just to elicit fear. And even when you go into the hospital and there is this protocol that was done, even that, it wasn't true. So I'm not going to get into the business of that, but I'm telling you, over all these years, I've done a lot of research on all of this. So it was really interesting to meet this guy and have him basically acknowledge all these things that I had seen that weren't really helping people. All these people went into the hospital and they put them on these protocols and they died alone. I mean, you saw it over and over and over again, right? So when you're now at this point with all of this, and there's much more research, you can look at all these different people that Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Peter McCullough, just there's a wealth of information out there now of all these people who are sharing information. And this guy, Brian Artis, one of the reasons why I like him so much is because in here, he's literally giving you solutions. He's giving you protocols to take that actually do help. So when I first saw his video a couple of years ago, I was like, what? What is he talking about? Nicotine. Nicotine. So what they're finding in people, getting back to the snake stuff, is snake venom. I'm not making this stuff up. He's not making it up. He's done the research on it. Many people have done the research on him. So there is snake venom. And here's the crazy thing. I went to my holistic doctor, and she has the ability with what she does. I sit down and she puts these things on my wrist, on my ankles, and around my head, and she can look at my system. And she, like, for instance, Nick, one time, she was like, Nick, you've got selenium in your system. What in the world? Well, that's one of the things that we can get from the environment. And he had gotten really sick from it. So she's looking at me and she's like, Audrey, you've got snake venom in your system. And I was like, what? I mean, so then this guy, Brian, our Dr. Artis, he comes to town and I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to take another look at this thing about, are you ready for this? Nicotine. So I'm going to put it in my very simple Audrey language, and I highly recommend. I'm going to be reading this book much more intently. I haven't had a moment since seeing him the other day when I got it. Basically, nicotine, it basically, I'm going to make this like simple, super simple. You have these receptors in your body that react to snake venom. Nicotine goes in and it literally kind of neutralizes it and it takes it out. So I'll give you an example. And this is, again, many people have had this happen now. When people have that where they can't smell and they can't taste things, it's almost immediate. They put on a nicotine patch or they'll chew nicotine gum, and their sense of taste and their sense of smell comes back. You can't make this stuff up. So obviously there's something in nicotine that works in our body that realigns whatever the symptoms are and brings it back to neutral. So it helps all these different symptoms. One of the symptoms I'm going to talk about from my own personal experience, because I am wearing a nicotine patch. I have had tinnitus for a while, like for a while. And at times it will get really kind of loud. And I've learned over all these years to literally ignore it or just be with it and not kind of fight it. So I started taking these nicotine patches, and guess what? It's lightening up. It's becoming less loud. So for me, it's having a good effect in that. And I've just started these over the last few days, so I'm not that far into having it be in my system. So let me see what these responses are here. Take a little moment. I'm happy you are talking about this. I've been looking into the snake venom possibility for my long COVID symptoms. When you connect the dots, many of my symptoms match up with snake venom poisoning. I've started on Dr. Brian Artis solutions and using nicotine patches daily. Feeling better already. Hello? Yes, my taste and smell is coming back by wearing the patches. So we have to be open at this moment to new information. We have to be open to new possibilities because I see so much of the time my clients will come in and they're sick and they don't have these solutions. Like I just saw somebody today on Moms of Conejo Valley. It helps with flu symptoms. It helps with cold symptoms. And so when I'm looking at this, we have to be open to solutions that are not that we take it and it cures the symptom, but it doesn't cure the thing. And the other part of it is a lot of times, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine recently took Dayquil and had an allergic reaction to it. They literally blew up from taking Dayquil. Well, it turns out there seems to be a lot of salt in Dayquil. So maybe it'll cure these things that aren't working for you, whatever the symptoms are. But when you're taking certain meds, it can have a serious impact on your liver, your kidneys, on your inflammation. So when they took this, it was like, wow, we were really very concerned for them. And luckily, we were able to understand that this was an allergic reaction to probably too much salt. So when you're taking something like nicotine, there's a part of it where, from what I'm understanding, and again, I'm just learning about all this, which is why I wanted to share it with you. I don't know that I've heard that many side effects from putting on a nicotine patch or from chewing. Well, if you eat too much or if you take too big of a dose, it can have adverse reactions. So what I've done is I got the 14 milligrams and I cut it into quarters. So I'm taking a very little dose daily. And I haven't had any other symptoms, but my tinnitus is getting better. And it seems like there's other things in my body that are shifting in a good way. So people who will be very funny about things. It's like, you're putting nicotine in your system. And it's like, well, you're putting Advil in yours. You know what I mean? Advil can have a very challenging effect on the liver, the kidneys. So when you're looking at all of this, it's to do it with an open mind and to do your own research about it, to literally watch those videos, to read his book, to talk to different people maybe that are doing this. I had a client come in the other day. This guy, he's like, Audrey, I'm taking the nicotine patch and it's having a really good reaction. I've been losing weight. It's like, oh my gosh, that's great for you. And by the way, Dr. Artis got into that stuff that people are taking right now that is designed to lose weight. And there's, believe it or not, I believe snake venom in there and Gila monster stuff because it paralyzes a part of your body on the inside and it has some major reactions. I have a friend of mine who works in the hospital, and when this thing first came out, this particular one that many of you have heard about, unfortunately, she said that there was a lot of people coming into the hospital that were having to have their gallbladder removed. She's not making this up. She works there. And so it's really important that when you are taking certain things that you want to really do your research and look at all the different avenues. I mean, it sounds great to take something and your body just, if you've been overweight, I understand that one. But when it affects other parts of your body and then you're not healthy, I don't think there's a good point to it. So it's important to look at everything. And this isn't to knock pharmaceuticals. I think that they're necessary for some things. And again, it's a point at the moment where you want to do your own research. And like for me in particular, I haven't taken a pharmaceutical in, I don't know, well over 10 years. I take supplements. There's supplements for everything. My thyroid, if I don't take my supplement, my body will blow up. So every day I take my thyroid supplement and I'm all good to go. I've got all kinds of energy. If I don't take it for a few days, I notice my energy starting to go down and I start to blow up. And it's like, oh my gosh, I think I've been forgetting something. Same thing with the inflammation that I have in my body. I've had a lot of toxins, so I do things to help pull those toxins out. I take turmeric to help with the inflammation. My kids, my daughters, when they would have their cycle, rather than taking something like a pharmaceutical, they take turmeric. Helps to bring down the inflammation, helps to bring down the pain level, and then they put like a certain kind of like deep blue from doTERRA on their stomach, and it helps to soften up the cramping. You know, so there's all these different avenues that you can use to adjust and to create the health of your body with more natural supplements that aren't going to be destructive to your organs. And I think we're in a moment right now where it's important to look at that. So really think about it when you are taking anything. Like for another example, one of my clients had a migraine the other day, and I gave her the suggestion to put some lavender on her temples. She wrote back to me, it's like, wow, it's like it feels better. Thanks. So there's all these natural remedies you can use for a migraine. There's all these natural remedies you can use for a huge amount of things. And just on a quick side note, years ago, anybody that knows who Edgar Casey is, actually, one of you watching, Kimberly, you and I have talked about that, Kim Malice. Uh, Edgar Casey used to channel, and he used to be able to kind of commune, converse, communicate with plants. And he wrote a whole book on this plant is good for this in the body. This plant is good for that in the body. But I want to really stress the point of when we're taking plants, certain people aren't making a lot of money. I mean, you can't patent a plant. So it's really important to understand, and I've talked about this many times, there's a lot of manipulation. Like if you watch TV, a lot of commercials are the pharmaceutical companies, and they make it out to be like, oh, yeah, take this stuff and you'll feel so much better. Well, you might take that stuff and you might feel better for the moment, but it could be having an adverse reaction somewhere else. And I'm not saying they all do, but I am saying that I haven't taken a drug for many, many years, and I'm hardly ever sick. And I can honestly say that. I mean, I definitely will have adverse reactions to the environment sometimes, but I'm around people that have the cold or a flu. And just recently, I was around quite a few people that were, and I never got it. So I take an immune booster. I have these drops that I got from my Dr. Nancy Sachs, and I take them every day. I take colloidal silver spray in the morning and at night, especially when things are going around. I'll spray it 3 times, and on that third spray, I'll breathe it in. Seems to be working. I'm not sick. So really consider looking at alternative approaches with things and really consider opening up your belief systems to maybe there's things that we have been inadvertently having in our body that aren't in our best interest. Like, I don't even know how snake venom could have gotten in my body. I have some ideas, but I'm willing to put on a nicotine patch and see what happens with it based on all the information I've been looking at. And if something goes awry, I can take the thing off and I'll never do it again. But at this point, I'm happy to have the tinnitus lightening up. So let me see what Kim's saying here. I spoke to nurses during that time that said gallbladder cancers were through the roof. They had 8 cases in 1 week. Yeah, and nobody talks about that. I mean, nobody's on the news saying, wow, we were in the emergency room and we've got all these people coming in with gallbladder issues. What's causing that? The news doesn't share all of that stuff. They have an agenda. And like I said before, and I'll say this again because it's really, really, really important. There used to be a thing called the Smith-Mundt Act, and it was after the debacle in World War II. And all of those people had an issue because there was so much propaganda. They were lied to, they were manipulated. So there came to be this Smith-Mundt Act that said the media can't lie. So for a while there, the media didn't lie. But then somebody came into office, and I think it was around, I don't remember what year it was at the moment, but they made an adjustment to that Smith-Mundt Act, and now the media can lie. They can tell you whatever. So it's important to get, if you're watching a lot of news and you're thinking, well, that's all that there is. No, no, there's a whole nother story out there. There's a whole nother bunch of news. You know what's interesting? It's kind of fascinating. I'm watching in this moment in time, it's like there's 2 separate timelines that are going on. And it's the people that believe that this is, oh my gosh, like the end of things. And then there's another whole group of people that are looking at, wow, we are experiencing the best thing ever. And it's really fascinating the discrepancy between the two. And so when I start looking around, it's like, why are these people thinking this? A lot of it is on the news. And I sit back and I watch the news sometimes because I want to see what they're saying. And it's like they're telling you one little part of the story. Like nobody on the news is going to say, wow, you know what? They found snake venom in people's bodies. And you can use nicotine to overcome the symptoms of what the snake venom can cause. Nobody's on the news saying that. In fact, on all these commercials, they're talking about here's the problem, and here's a solution. But not one of these companies is saying, hey, eat organic, do these things, stop eating the processed foods, get more of food that's firsthand touched by the sun, secondhand touched by the sun, and get your butt out there and get some vitamin D, some sunshine, get some exercise, move your body. They're not saying all that stuff. They're saying, here, we'll solve your problem. You're overweight. Here, we'll give you this and you can lose all that weight. But I'm just going to say, some of the people that I've been looking at, some of those celebrities, they look sick. I mean, I, I don't know what you think, but I was looking at one of those award shows and I was like, that doesn't look healthy, you know? So the other people who are actually happy, they're excited about what's going on in the world. They are on a whole nother channel. So you get to choose what channel you're watching. You get to choose what you're doing. So as we're moving forward into this year, and there's all this issue around snakes, there's another part of it with snakes. you know, Hedonistic, vain, malicious, overly manipulative, duplicitous. Those are the things that came up with the contrast with snakes. So when you're in this moment, this is another exercise to do. You can stop the tape here. Are you happy or are you in fear? Are you excited about the future? Are you looking at it going, "Oh my gosh, what's going to happen to us?" Which train do you want to be on? So if you're in the train that's in fear, I'm going to just say a lot of that is manipulation. So what's causing the fear? Step back in your own life and look at, where is this coming from? Is it through social media? Because there's algorithms. They see when you slow down. They know what causes emotions within you. It's amazing the technology that we're literally unaware of. I've been looking into some of that as well. So when you are scrolling, do you feel better afterwards? Do you feel worse? Are there moments where you're like, ugh? I know as I was scrolling at one point, I realized I would slow down because I have a thing about accidents and whatever. So then it started showing me more of that stuff. And I realized there's my manipulation. So if something like that came up, I'd quickly get past it. And now it doesn't come up so much anymore. And I pause on things like cute kittens and interesting information. I really pay attention to the things that are thrown in there that cause feelings of fear, anxiety, stress, worry. It's intentional. So when you're looking at any of that kind of news, pay attention. How do you feel watching it? I've talked to many people who are in anxiety because they saw this or that. Just the thing with the fires recently and all the toxins. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the news about that. But nobody's telling you on the news, well, if you're breathing in some toxins, if it's getting into your system, which it has gotten into mine, I take my dose of chlorophyll. I do those things that pull the toxins out of my system. Like I talked about before, I'll take a bath because there was one day that was really bad for me. I got up in the morning early. I took a bath. I put in my Epsom salt, my baking soda, and believe it or not, boron. I got out of that bath, the symptoms were gone. So it's important to pay attention to where your mind is at and what feelings are happening for you. You get to choose what you watch. You get to choose what you do with what goes on with your body. So when I'm sharing news like this, Dr. Artis, it's because in his book, he has a lot of different things. Like you can take NAC, you can take L-glutamine, L-glutathione. He's got a whole chapter in here on these are the symptoms and these are the things that you can do, which I love. I'm all about the solutions. So important if you're watching the news and there's this part where it's like, we're all toxic now and da da da. It's not forever. And our body knows what to do with these things. Our body knows how to process it. I've been processing toxins for like over 12 years now. I used to be a toxic nightmare, and I'm not anymore. I still have my moments, but they're not as bad. Let me see if there's any. Oh, Miss Kim Possible is saying, by the way, nicotine is not addictive and it does not cause cancer. It's all the chemicals and cigarettes that are causing the problems. Excellent point, Miss Possible. People don't understand that we have been allowed, and which is why I'm excited beyond measure that Kennedy is hopefully, I don't know, I haven't watched the news today, just the red dye alone. But we have been allowed to smoke cigarettes. Literally, the doctors were promoting them in the 50s. I take this on my break. You can see all the old commercials. And what's in the cigarette, the nicotine isn't the issue. It's like she's saying, they put other chemicals in it that are addictive and chemicals that do certain things in the body. So the nicotine, you can chew on some nicotine. If you chew too much, it will give you a kind of spacey feeling or whatever, but it's not the addictive part of it. Those cigarette companies made billions of dollars off of people's addictions. And it's because of the added elements that they put into it. You know, along that same note, this is one of those things that really gets to me. Oh my gosh, it's 6:59 already. I started a little late. I'll go a little late. This thing with kids and being addicted to vaping. You know, they don't want us to do certain things and they're outlawed or whatever, but we're allowed to have our kids vaping. Popcorn lung. Anybody heard of that? Look up the ingredients in Lucky Charms and I think Fruit Loops that our kids are allowed to put these things in their bodies. There's so many things that we are allowed to ingest. And I think that is all coming to a screeching halt now. I think that it's time. So when you are shopping, if you're buying things and you can't read what the ingredient is, if it's a big long word that you don't know what the heck it is, it's probably not good in your body. There's a guy that did this thing and it was one of those two cereals and he he read the ingredient and then he ran to the store. He, he ran in the store and he went straight to the antifreeze that goes in your car. I believe it was that. I could be mistaken. And there's the same ingredient. Why do they need to put that in children's food? I don't know. But what I do know is we can make a choice at this point. We can own the health of our body. We can own the health of our mind and our spirit. So do the things that you can to make those adjustments. Pay attention to what's going in here. Pay attention to what's going in here. And if there are things that are in the environment that you're breathing, don't be in fear of it. Do something about it. Drink some chlorophyll. There's all these things that you can do to detox your body. I have a friend of mine that has a detox place out here. You can go and get in her Hocat. It's a great detoxifier. So there's all these new modalities for healing. So rather than be afraid of it, do something that empowers you, whichever way you're doing it. And you get to choose. And if you want to get angry about it, get angry. But don't be a victim about it. Get righteously angry. That's why I'm able to talk with you all about this. I'm really righteously angry. I've had enough. So when Dr. Artis comes to town, I can watch him and learn from him, and then I can share it with you guys. And Nick and I, in teaching that course that we're teaching on Monday nights, a lot of it is based on stuff like this. I've got this big book. My clients come in and they have their issues. And I said earlier I would address this thing with the stomach. Marked on the page, I'm sure, because many, many people have stomach issues. So when you're having these challenges, that's why I say you need to get out of the fear. When we are in fear, it's creative in the body. What did I mark here? Teeth problems, stomach. So when you're looking at this book, many of you know who Louise Hay is. She healed her body from breast cancer, and very much like I healed mine from that kidney stone and that lump and the different things, like even these toxins. I don't go into fear about it. I'm literally willing it out of my system. And I'm doing those things that pull it out of my system. So I'm not going into being afraid of it. I'm taking my baths. I go in the infrared at least 3 times a week. That really pulls the stuff out of the system as well. So there's all these modalities, there's all these things that we can do to keep the health of our system. But when you're looking at your emotions, that's the most important thing. Thinking, next important thing. So when you're looking at a book like this, I have to have some water. Addie's in the house. Hi, Addie. Nice to have you join us. This thing with the stomach. So my client will come in and they're like, I've got something or another going on with my stomach. There's all these things that can cause stomach problems. And the emotions, just for fun, I wanted to read a little bit of this for you because there are a lot of people with stomach stuff. So part of your stomach, you have to remember your stomach is about your gut health. Like I used to have a leaky gut. And part of it was because I was drinking things that have aspartame in it. I was eating things with glyphosate in it, these chemicals that really should not be a part of our body at all. But I was very ignorant back then. And my stomach was a big mess. So your stomach, when it's not balanced, when it doesn't have good flora, when there's leaky gut, which is literally kind of like, I say that word literally a lot. It's like if your stomach was a balloon, there's all these little tiny holes in the balloon in the stomach. And instead of everything staying contained in that, and then it goes down through your system, those things that we eat and the acids, whatever all of that is, it gets into the system and it causes inflammation. The other thing about the stomach, when your stomach isn't, let's just say good, not vibing great, it makes for foggy thinking, not clear thinking, which when I'm working with my clients, it's like that's one of the things that I look at. So a lot of people, they'll come in and it's like, what's going on with your diet? Are you drinking that Diet Coke or Coca-Cola? Those things are one of the big culprits. A lot of other things are as well, but that's something I know one of my people in my life, I said to them, it's like every time you drink a one of those sodas, not the diet one, but the other one, it's like eating an ice cream sundae. It's got so much sugar in it, and sugar wreaks havoc in the body. So, with all that said, first hand touch by the sun food, second hand touch by the sun food, minimal amounts of processed food, that alone is going to change things up. But the emotions that go with the stomach, that's what this girl, her name is Yvette Rose, and this is one of her books. She's just amazing. So when my clients come in, it doesn't mean that these are all of your things, but these are very common things that feeling, thinking, talking to the 50 trillion cells, talking to the stomach, right? So the emotions around it, and this could be like irritable bowel syndrome, digestive problems, colon cancer, candida, hernia, intestines, different issues with stomach problems. So the emotions are you feel obligated to accept the family's emotional burdens. This is a result of feeling obligated to make up for being a bad person or for causing problems. The family did not exercise healthy boundaries. One person's problem was everyone else's problem, and those who did not suffer along with the rest were considered unsupportive and were punished or isolated. Here's another one. This is a pretty common one. You were not allowed to cry. You have developed a survival instinct to lay low, a hiding instinct. You never knew when the next emotional outburst was going to strike. The body is always ready to fight or flight, and as a result, it might produce too much gastric acid. This is also related to the vomiting instinct. The body tries to rid itself of excess acid to get away from it or discharge it. This often relates to a person who is trying to rid themselves of circumstances that are triggering old traumas. It's the body's way of trying to create a barrier between the person and their stressful environment. Here's another one. You find it challenging to accept and allow people into your life. You are overcompensating with strong boundaries. You have a hard time connecting to your talents and passion. You felt that you were not allowed to be better than others. You often get yourself emotionally worked up to the point of being physically sick. Um, I'm going to just go into a couple of these other ones, but there's a few of them here. But this is a common one. You feel controlled and held back by influential people. These people have undermined your success. They may have caused you to feel useless, unsuccessful, or unable to please rigid and stubborn people. And influential people could be parents, it could be teachers, it could be anybody that's like influential to you. Here's another one. You seem to feel that no matter how hard you work, your efforts will be in vain. This is due to a lack of acknowledgement in the family, as there have always been more important issues to worry about. That's a pretty common one, too. And here's the last one I'm going to say for tonight. Dominant figures may have projected their own need for power, control, and manipulative agendas at you. You feel a great deal of anger, resentment, bitterness, or explosive rage. Your bitterness, negative thinking, or anger is eating away at you. You are not you are not processing these emotions. Instead, you use the anger as a weapon to ward off dominating and manipulative people. Again, with the anger. So when you are understanding how you roll better, that's the whole thing that we're doing in this course that Nick and I are teaching. That's one aspect of it. We're also teaching a whole bunch of other parts of how we're creating the health of our body. And a lot of it has to do with your mind, your heart, and the choices that we make, which is based on your mind. So when you are understanding how you roll and how you're creative in your body, then using that information, you're able to make those adjustments. There you are. and life gets healthier, life gets happier, life gets more constructive rather than destructive. So, with everything that I've talked about tonight, take what you will, maybe do your own research, listen to a YouTube video of Brian Ardis, Dr. Ardis, maybe get his book. And there is a lot of valuable information to be had. So I think this is an important time for us to inform ourselves. Like I said at the very beginning of all of this, information equals power, and information about self is empowerment. But with all of that, you have to take those actions, and you have to be brave, and you have to be committed to yourself because you're the most important thing. So, with that all being said, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And I will be back here again next Wednesday. If you would like to join us on Monday night, give me a call or call the center at 818-865-8770. We are Zooming it and we are in person. So we end up having a good time. Nick is fairly amusing in those kind of situations. He's very amusing a lot of the time. So he makes it a lot of fun. And I've got a PowerPoint that I share. I'm going to be putting some of those pictures up on our Healthy Mind, Healthy Body Facebook page. And you're welcome to join us. For more information about that class, it's at newmontcenter.net. And there's a calendar page that has all the information. So I love you all very much. Have a fantastic week. Make those adjustments, realign yourself. And if you have something great that you've discovered along the way, let me know. Okay? And I'll see you next week. Love you lots. Good night.